How we doing, everybody? My name is Gordy Gundaker. This is the Dirt Parlor podcast with my co-host
Don Martin.
Don Martin, baby. And we are brought to you by Nutrient Ag,
Hoker Trucking,
Checkered Customs,
Body Spice Skinny, an official Longhorn dealer out of Knoxville, Tennessee.
Heck yeah. And we're proud to have you guys with us. Hope you enjoy the show and we're along for the ride.
We'll see you at the races.
Hi, I'm Gordy Gundaker. Welcome to the Dirt Parlor podcast.
Hi, I'm Don Martin. Welcome to the Dirt Parlor. And this thing is big. All right, folks, welcome to the Dirt Parlor. Tonight we got a special guest with us. We got the crew chief from the 7BC and the Clausen Marshall stable. I'm excited about having him tonight. We got Jake Argo. Jake, welcome to the show, buddy.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
I don't know really kind of where to start. I think the biggest thing is I got to know because I watched Rodney Argo race at Tri-City Speedway in the old CRA days. And so I got to know, like, how did racing get in your blood a little bit here? Tell us from the beginning.
So Rodney would be my uncle. He ran a lot of non-wing cars, for a number of years. So his dad would be my grandpa, Don. Basically, my grandparents raised me from the time I was like 4 or 5. And he was always involved in cars at Ascot and stuff like that. And then, so, that parlayed into my uncle starting to run. So I was so always had a car around and just always around it. And then, that was kind of like my introduction to it.
Was crew chief and something you always, wanted to do? Is that something where, did you want to race or what, how did that kind of work into it?
Yeah. Obviously everybody starts out, you're supposed to drive or you want to drive, right? Well, we did quarter midgets and stuff. And I quickly found out that wasn't for me. I kind of like working on the stuff more than I like driving it, honestly. That and my uncle was racing full time, or not full time, but a lot. So that kind of took up most of the weekends. So I didn't really get to race too much, but yeah, I felt like I liked working on stuff, working on that end of things more than I did driving them, honestly.
Yeah.
When I first saw Jake, you Chili Bowl, you had he's got a great relationship with Andy Bondio.
Okay, yeah.
And I think anybody knows, man, when you go to Tulsa in January, the Bondio 47 has been a staple mark, for years. And how'd you and Andy hook up?
So that was through my grandpa. My grandpa has a metal finishing shop, plating, polishing shop in LA, which that's where I grew up, is in LA, like a beach city in LA. So he did some work for Andy, and I just became buddies with him and started going with him to the Chili Bowl in 2001. Yeah, 2001. So I went basically 20 years with Andy, just until just recently here. So I
honestly didn't know that. I've been around the Chili Bowl a long time. I didn't realize I guess I never really hung out in the Bondio camp there until Dom ran for him a couple times, but I didn't realize that you had been with him that long. That's kind of news to me, but is that kind of how that transitioned into the sprint car world for you, or how did that work out?
No, because Andy, he just liked running Chili Bowl only, for the bulk of his, the bulk of the last 30 years or whatever, 30 years. So it was just kind of like something that I did with him. And, that, we just did, I got hooked up with a couple guys, that ran cars out in California and stuff. So, I became buddies with Josh Wise and Danny Stratton, and just started going to races with them, and my buddy Garrett Hansen, who had a shop across the street from my grandpa's, he had a midget, and I'd tinker around with him and stuff, and then like I said, and then going with Josh and stuff, that's kind of and then we came back to the Midwest a couple of years during the summer, spent a couple of weeks, and I'm like, man, I got to figure out how to make this work, how to get back here. And
yeah,
and it worked out.
That's what I was curious about. Yeah. How you
Yeah.
how'd you get to the Midwest, you know?
So basically, yeah, just the biggest thing was getting hooked up with Josh Wise. We ran like his family car out in California, and and then we would come back to the Midwest and run. You know, I think in 2003, 2002, 2003, we came back for a couple weeks here and there, and then 2003, we ran a car with Dino Tomasi, and we won Belleville in '03, and then obviously that kind of like that put him on the map. Um, then he got a ride with Tony Stewart's midget team the next year, and then I was actually brought in to crew chief that, which was turned out to be a rather large undertaking for a 19-year-old from California, and it didn't end up lasting. It didn't end up lasting more than 7 months there,
Yeah.
but it got me to Indiana, and I've never really looked back since then. So
That's kind of wild to think at the age of 19 that you take on a full-time crew chiefing job for one of the biggest names in all of racing really at the time. I mean, I knew what I was doing at 19, and it sure as hell wasn't going to be crew chiefing no race teams.
yeah,
And
and yeah, full transparency, I was
yeah.
nowhere prepared for that. I come back. Well, it was right after
Well, who
Chili Bowl,
would?
so middle of January, and you got to have two pavement cars ready to go end of February to go out to all the way out to Phoenix and Irwindale to run, and then the dirt starts in April. So like it was a pretty big undertaking, and yeah, like I said, we had some good times and some bad times, and it was yeah, like I said, it only lasted about 7 months there, and then I yeah
Shipped
went
on.
on. Yeah,
And
yeah,
and
it
then the
happened.
CSI shock thing came along, right? I mean, is this how this kind of, is this kind of how it evolved?
No, that wasn't till like CSI started in like
Yeah,
'09. Then I actually went to work there full time in
right. I remember
14.
that.
Yeah, 14 to 20 I worked there full time.
Yep.
So so yeah, I mean I just
I'm telling you.
yeah, I did. Yeah, so like after the Tony Stewart deal, like I did some stuff with some family guys, Fitzpatrick family, a couple tours there, and in '05 I worked with Dave Steele, which was
Oh yeah.
that guy. That was probably, I'd say, between Andy and Dave, those guys were my two strongest mentors, so to speak. Even though it was pavement racing with Dave, like just the way he conducted himself, like that back then, drivers, a lot of the drivers worked on their cars, and he got it from you know from the checkered flag of one race to the green flag of the next race, everything in between. Just yeah, really taught me a lot, and miss him a lot.
That's something I had always heard. I never met Dave, but all the things you read about him, you see all the obviously all the races he won, and but that's probably for you at the time, the best thing you can do is get under the wing of somebody that has just that pure knowledge and information, but also too, I mean, really being able to, the fact that he was driving the race car, you probably picked up a ton just from that, because you could get the information from both sides, and really him almost crew chiefing himself and racing.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt. Yeah, I mean, definitely one of the best. It didn't matter. Yeah, at that point, it was good for me to get under a guy like Dave, and just learn as much as I could in a short amount of time. And yeah, it doesn't matter if it's dirt or pavement. Like you're still preparing the same way. Your thought process is a lot the same. Decision making, just all the preparation that goes into it. Like, yeah, it was great times with him.
And then, I mean, and then you look at the opportunity that you got with, with Clausen Marshall. I mean, how did this, how did this kind of come apart and come about, a little bit? Because, I mean, I remember that when Brian, of course, we lose Brian, and Brian was going to be always the focal point of Clausen Marshall, and all of a sudden we have, we're all horrified, what happened. Um, it breaks my heart, still this day. But and then you hook up with Richard and Jennifer and Tim. It doesn't get any better than that. Richard and Jennifer, in my opinion, are the classiest people that you could ever be around in the sport. And I'd love to know kind of more of how this all kind of came together for you.
Yeah. So at that point, so yeah, that was the 2020 is yeah, basically just before COVID, I guess. So, well, I guess it would be December of the year before is when it started. I saw Tim at
Right.
PR. At this point, I was just working full time, building shocks,
Yep.
kind of managing the shock building side of things and everything. At CSI, kind of doing some little bit like weekend racing here and there with some guys, you know. And then yeah, he basically said, you know, yeah, we're starting this wing team. We're going to run like 25, 30 races or something like that. That'd be something you're interested in. And actually, I turned it down at first because I thought I had something else lined up, which ended up falling through in about March. And I called Tim up. I'm like, hey man, is that job still available? And he's like, yeah, we're still just, you know, we don't really know what. Yeah. So I came up to the shop and we did, you know, they had kind of already started building some cars and stuff. And then, yeah, and then like COVID hit, you know, and then you're just kind of like
Right.
trying to figure out where you can even race and stuff like that. Kind of obviously a weird time, but yeah, we did, you know, the first few weekends were good. Well, we won the first race out, which was good. And then, you know, we had some other good runs and then, yeah, about July, we were leaving a track and I think everybody was making a left to go to the next race and I was making a right to drive home, you know, to be at work at 8 the next morning. And I'm like, man, I don't know. I missed it. And I felt like this was the right opportunity for me, the right time. Yeah, just the resources were there. The driver was there. Everything was there. I'm like, man, if I'm going to give it one more serious shot, you know, I'm going to do it. So August came around right before Knoxville, and I just told Garrett, I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna take this serious, and because the next year they were already, you know, I think things went good enough to where they're like, hey, we're gonna run like 75 races next year. I'm like, well, there ain't no way I could do both. So
Mhm.
yeah, so I just put in my 2 weeks with Garrett and started, you know, the next week full time with them, and everything's been pretty
Well,
good since then. So.
COVID, you're probably cooped up too during COVID, and you're like, man, I hate being at home all the time. I know that's how I was. I mean, that's all I could think about when, you know, during COVID and everything. Is like, I just want to get back out on the road and get back to racing. So, I mean, you probably had you know, just a combination of things really kind of led up to that moment. It's just timing was everything there.
Yeah, a lot of weird shit happened in 2020. You know, just yeah, weird time, and just that's just kind of how it all shook out. So
And we got to talk about Tyler. What's it like, the two of you guys being on the road together? And I mean, when I see Tyler Courtney at the races, he's very relaxed, mild mannered, you know, and you're kind of that way. I'm just curious to kind of like, you know, talk about the relationship a little bit the two of you have. To me, I think it's one of the best combos in racing.
Yeah.
I
um,
definitely think it's one of the most underrated.
yeah, well, appreciate that. Yeah, no, it's been great. So like, actually, I've known Tyler since he was like, I was helping some families with some quarter midgets. Like, I just kind of like did a lot of random things through the years, you know, and so the families that I was helping was, you know, racing with or against Tyler. So I've known their family since Tyler was probably 10, 11, 12 in there. And so and now I'm 40 and he's 30, and like I said, the timing was good. And yeah, I feel like you know, we've had I feel like we both had somewhat similar paths in racing, you know, like we both had the patches where we grinded it out pretty hard, you know. And we just I think I could speak for him. We're both just really appreciative of the position that we're in, and you know, the team we're with, and just where the sport's headed. And everything about it. So yeah, it's good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, talk about that too, right? So obviously you guys are on the road with High Limit and running around. What's it been like, I don't know the difference, necessarily, but for us it's like you see everybody talks about being, on the Outlaw Tour or the High Limit Tour. So, each side has a lot of good things to say, but do you, from your point of view, do you like, the high limit schedule? Do you like what the outlaw schedule looks like? Is it, obviously the West Coast stuff is good for you because that's home, but kind of talk about that.
Yeah, I think I heard Donnie Schatz say it probably the best. It's like the High Limit, we're basically doing the same thing just on the other side of the street, So
Yeah.
it's a lot of the same, same rules, same cards, you deal with the same stuff night in and night out. I do like the schedule and the freedom a little bit more with what we're doing now with the High Limit. We grind out a lot of races in a short amount of time here coming up with like a lot of Tuesday, Wednesday races. We're racing 3-4 nights a week, pretty heavy. And there's, a couple weeks off. You could take those weeks off or go run with the Outlaws or not. Yeah, you take them off.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it's nice. So it's nice to have a little bit of freedom in that aspect.
The other thing too that I think the car, I mean, you guys naturally you have CSI shocks on the car. I don't think there's anybody else on the series and High Limit or the World of Outlaws that are running CSIs full time. And you can talk about that. I could be wrong too there. And then of course you guys are running the Stanton engines, correct? And
Yes, sir.
then you look at, there are not a lot of Stanton engines on the tour. And yet you look at the combination that these guys are running with the CSI, and then you throw Schnee in there, and basically it's Rico, Kyle, and Courtney that are running the Schnee program. And so I think it's a very unique a deal. And you can't say what they're not doing isn't right because they've won the Royal. They've, second in championship in points last year, second currently right now, all-star championships. I mean, it's obvious that this program's working for you. And I'd like you to talk
Yeah,
a little bit about it, because am I right that, and I think we talked about this a little bit, the fact that kind of like it was Eagle and then it went EMI, Speedway sells out, then kind of like the Schnee kind of goes into what it is to now. Correct?
yeah, yeah. I'll just try to break your question down into three parts. So the
Yeah,
shock deal.
absolutely. Sorry,
It,
there's a lot of
no, you're
variables
good.
there, but
Yeah.
it's so
Yeah,
interesting to
and then
me.
and then I'll get input on how it's different in late models because
Yeah.
I do
It's
see
funny,
some.
that's where I was headed with it. I want to get
Right.
into that a little bit.
Yeah, so the shock deal, like I just always, since I was uh I guess since I was probably, well, I was still in California, so like 18, I kind of like had a fascination with like the shock portion of things because it was new. And you could kind of tell like, man, there's like, this is kind of the direction we're going, like, well,
Mhm.
when I was 18, nobody had shock dynos or stuff. Now you're not going to go race without a shock dyno and knowing what your shocks are at and stuff like that. So like you can kind of see. So it's just trying to stay ahead of uh, evolutions, I guess you could say, or whatever. But
Yeah.
so I've always just kind of had a fascination with the shock end of things. Kind of did a lot of my own stuff, and then obviously a real good relationship with Garrett, Braden, and everybody at CSI. And so we work. So yeah, we do a lot of our own stuff, and then we do a lot of stuff with CSI also. So I just feel like if you can be it's all about I don't know, being a bigger fish in a smaller pond, if you will. Like yeah, just feel like the relationship and keeping things in house more is better. And then to move on to the engines, same deal. Like
Mhm.
deal came up with Eric at Stanton, and kind of liked what he had going on. I think the timing was right to make a switch. Again, just kind of like being a little bigger fish in a smaller pond there with him. And then Schnee, the chassis deal, you know, to back up a little, a little bit on the legacy part of that. Like, Brian had his own chassis company for a long time. Went to
Yes.
work for EMI, which was Eagle, and he had his own line of cars, also Schnee. So basically, like all the EMI or Eagle cars that you saw in the last 10 years, Brian had his hand on those. And then I don't know what exactly happened there with Speedway, but they basically just shut the whole chassis deal down because they were just doing too much. It looked like, they're trying to build micros and mini sprints and sprint cars and quarter mid, like all that stuff or whatever. But so the opportunity came up for Brian to get his company back, basically, and they cut him a good deal, and he got hooked up with Dan Lawson, and they built a brand new shop right outside of I-70 in Odessa, Missouri. Super nice place, and they're like just all about quality over quantity there. And yeah, we've been super. I mean, the guy is whenever it first came up, I talked to Brian on the phone for probably 30 minutes, and I'm like, dude, this guy, he freaking gets it, And those are the kind of guys. Those are the guys you want in your corner, guys that get it. So, yeah, so just a hell of a craftsman. Yeah, he just likes building chassis and doing them good. I think that they do like basically like one a week there. Like it's not a high production deal, it's just quality over quantity. So, so yeah, to kind of turn it around on Gordy here. So like, like a sprint car guys, we buy the chassis, we buy and build the shocks ourselves. We buy our torsion bars from this guy and a lot of our components, and we build. And we try to keep a lot of stuff in house. I feel like a lot of the top end teams try to keep everything in house. But looking at late models from a 30,000 foot view, do you guys? It looks like you buy rollers from the company.
Yeah, well,
like
so
it looks like there's more support on the chassis guys and
so
stuff.
the easiest way to say what the late model world is right now is it's cookie cutter, and it sucks. Honestly, it used to not be that way, but I don't, I'd probably say 6 or 7 years ago is really when that started really evolving into that. Longhorn took off when JD was in the 6 car.
Yep.
You had Rumley on it, and that was when, all of a sudden everybody wanted to buy Longhorns. You always had Rockets and Black Diamonds and Masters built and Bloomquist cars and, all these things. And I think really a lot of the innovators went away on our side. And that kind of, I'm not really knocking our guys. There's, not any smart guys out there, but it was easier to buy speed than it was to, go to the racetrack and really find it. And Longhorn obviously has picked the game up on our side, and now, you call Longhorn and pretty much everybody buys a roller, in a sense, so you're getting rear end, front end, your steering shafts, racks, all that stuff, fuel cells, and then, you're putting your drive line in it across, and your other parts, whatever motor program you want to run, which is kind of the same deal. We're down to about 3 or 4 of those as well. And I buy my cars as frames from Ty Tor out of Ohio, who Hoffman drives for, and we still put all of our own stuff on it. I've got a lot of product sponsors that have been with me for a long time, and honestly, I like putting my race cars together. At the end of the day, I've just grew up doing that. My dad did it that way, and so it was. That's just how I've always known how to do it. I've never really just called up and said, hey, I need a race car. I want to come pick it up and it's ready to go. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. Don't get me wrong. If you got the money and things, but to me, I enjoy that side of putting those things together. Cause I know when I do it, it's correct, and really now it's just Longhorn and Bilstein have built this partnership that right now is damn near not beatable. Sheppy did a good job last week at the Illini, but that's also Sheppy's home racetrack. So that's a whole nother topic. But it's hard to, how it is. You're on the road, right? And having time to go test or go do all these other things that you really need to do, you can't do because you need to get back to the shop and really get maintenance and then get back on the road to go down to the next place. So really what late model racing has turned into is it's easier to just buy all the parts directly from Longhorn, directly from Rocket, and bolt them right on, and that's what it is, And some guys are still trying different things. Jimmy Owens has built his own car recently, and I think he got fed up with the same thing. It's just like man, how am I going to beat these guys if I have the exact same stuff that they have? If we're all buying the same things, and that part's kind of frustrating. But at the end of the day, you still can work. You still get to go to work on your own shocks and stuff. You can buy a standard package. Guys like JD and Sheppy and RTJ, they're not, it's not a standard deal. Those guys go to work, they do their homework. That's why they're the best. But I don't know. It's a weird concept, how much it's changed in 10 to 20 years, because if you look back at all the innovators we had, from your Rayburns and Scott and, all Jeff Purvis, Larry Moore and Bob Pierce, and guys that really, they would go in the middle of the week and cut bars out of these things and try something the next weekend and just wing it. There's nobody that's doing that anymore, unfortunately. So I don't know. It's a completely different style, I feel like, than the sprint car world. If you ask me, just because there's really only 3 or 4 chassis builders, where I feel like the sprint car world has a little more variance than we do.
We talked about that, the fact that we were looking at our top 25, Jake, and it was like the engine combinations and the chassis combinations, and, it's all over the board. Gordy goes, geez, I could do the top 25 in dirt late models in about 5 minutes, because we're all basically the same thing.
Yeah.
And, so it's completely different. And I remember when Bart Hartman once told me something that was interesting. He was watching, he goes, I was watching him build a sprint car. He says, at McSkill at an all-star race, he goes, from the ground up in the parking lot. He goes, they built the sprint car from the ground up. He says they were done at lunchtime, went to eat. He says, hell, I wouldn't have a hood done, for my late model.
Right.
So, I mean, it's just a different world, And that brings me to another topic that I definitely got to hear about from you two. I know the late models with the tire prep, getting ready. I mean, everything. And I'd like to talk about tire prep late models compared to sprint cars, a little bit about both of you, to know kind of like what are you both doing? And there's a big difference
from my vantage point, which I've spent a lot of time around Ripper and Sheldon and those guys. And when we first hung out with them, we went to Volusia, and dude, they wore out a right rear tire, I felt like, every time they hit the racetrack. And both me and Hoffman were like, are you idiots ever going to buff these things or sipe them or cut them? Or are we going to do anything? Or are we just going to stare at them and keep bolting on new ones? And it's funny because everything is so much different. Sprint cars have so much more wheel spin than we do. And the way, we use our right fronts in a completely different manner than they use their right fronts. But to me, it always seemed like, there's a tire guy on a sprint car team is always more of just a guy who mounts a bunch of tires, and maybe you cut them. But I feel like lately it's picked up a little bit more. There's a lot more grooving and siping and a lot more tire work going into it.
Yeah. No, we've definitely been paying a lot more attention to that in like last 10 years or so. I feel like the biggest difference is like the late models are heavier. They have less tire contact with the track, just as much power, and they're harder tires. So every little detail on the tires is probably more, how do you say that? Just more important, I guess you could say,
right,
on a late model, where, sprint cars, like, the wheel spin's bad. Like we're on the, we're worried about, too much heat and blistering a lot and things like that. Especially on the big fast places and stuff. But I don't, it's, I guess, I guess that's where we're at on that.
No, I just think that you brought up the Illini 100. We were talking about this a little bit, and I'm going to ask Gordy. Gordy, who do you think his favorite driver in late model racing is?
Oh man,
and it blew me away yesterday. Blew me away.
Was he racing at the Illini?
Yes, he's an Illinois driver.
It's got to be.
He told me yesterday. He goes. Babs' favorite driver to watch.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So he got that.
That's fair.
But his favorite driver, Carpenterville, Illinois.
Dennis Erb, huh?
Yeah, I like Dennis. So
This is great.
I would say Bab's probably my favorite. I would say, but I love the way
Okay.
Dennis operates. Like he's just
Yeah.
a businessman doing business when he's there, and I mean, who the hell runs the bottom better than him? I can't think. I maybe here the last few years, maybe not so much, but I mean, man, 5 to 10, 15 years ago, who ran the bottom better than he did? Holy shit.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. That's, really when I felt like I got going 8, 9 years ago, I mean, we ran a ton of summer nationals races and Dennis was always there. And I think I know I learned a lot from racing behind him and racing the heat races with him on patience and things, to run the bottom at those places. And, I mean, he has won a ton of summer national races and different things. And I always saw it as everybody goes to Illinois and they're like, man, you got to beat the walls down. You got to blow the deck out of it. And I was never all that great at it anyways. So I was like, well, why the hell would I go do it if I know if I go up and do it, I'm going to run like 13th. I got to find somewhere else to run on the racetrack. And I learned a lot from just racing with him and following him and how he, took care of his race car, how he runs the bottom and really, we also worked together when he was in Black Diamond cars. We were in Black Diamond cars at the same time. So we got to learn a lot. And so I've always really been really good friends with Dennis and Heather. And for one, Heather, is usually the only crew help they had. So there's been numerous times where, we'd been in a race together and she'd go up to my little brother or my dad and be like, hey, if something happens, you mind helping us out? And if anything would happen on my stuff, she'd be the first one to help out. So that makes sense. So, there's a lot of people who don't look at it from the standpoint like you look at it, right? It's like a crew chief style because Dennis takes care of his equipment. He's not, overworking stuff, and he's methodical in races. I mean, he won, he won the Dream. Well, yeah, I don't know what year was that, 18, 19, whatever that was. It might have been before then, but and he did it the same way.
What's funny is when he won the Dream, I'll never forget what Bloomquist said. He goes, this is going to be the greatest interview of all time. Make it 10 words out of it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Make it 10 words. Yeah. I always heard Scott going, this could be.
Oh yeah.
But and the other thing is, I mean, Heather and Dennis have been together for, I mean, it's an unbelievable relationship.
Yeah.
I mean, unbelievable partnership.
Yeah. So I did a stint where I lived in Terre Haute for 3 years. So like 07, 6, 7, and 8, I think. And, the summer nationals were prime, I felt like through those years. And, they just ran so many good tracks in Illinois, midweek. So like when we weren't racing, I'd hop in the truck Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, whatever, and go try to see a new track. That's where I learned about the Herald and Review 100, best race of the year for a lot of years. Farmer City, Granite City, Little Belleville was sweet. Just watching qualify. I could drive all the way over there, just watch qualifying and go home. I'd be happy. Spoon River. I mean, there's some good stuff over there.
It's funny you say Little Belleville because there was I don't know, it was probably 5 years ago, something like that. I drew like 99 out of 100 and I'm the last car to go out. There's a huge storm rolling in and we're not going to make it to the heat races. Like it's very obvious we're not going to do it. Well, Bab goes out there and drills the right rear deck piece off in the quarter panel, the spoiler, all of this stuff. So he can go out there and he's going to go out here and just murder the fence and goes out and didn't go. He went out like the 10th car and from the first car out to the 20th car out, they weren't any faster. And I told Dad, I said, man, I really don't want to go out here and destroy this thing, then get rained on and have to work on it. I was like, I think I'm just going to go putt around the infield. My little brother at the time was probably 15, and he's over there giving me shit. He's like, oh, sack up one time, go blow the deck out of this thing. And, I'm like, dude, I don't want to. So I'm like, no, I'm going to go out there and putt around the infield. And so I go down there and I putt around the infield and I come back out and I was like, man, that was so slow. And Trevor goes, dude, you were quick time by 2/10. I was like, no
Yeah.
way. Yeah. But that's how Little Belleville was. Like you didn't, they were so very opposite lines on how you had
Yep.
to race them. But that place was, it was so I'm sad they're destroying it and reshaping the racetrack. I wish they had just brought it back how it was.
That place was so vintage with the covered grandstands on both sides and the wood walls, and it raced. I mean, okay, the midgets were phenomenal there. The late models
Right.
were pretty good for how small
Yeah.
it was. Like
Yeah.
it wasn't quite as wide as Macon gets, but it was, man, good races there.
I always think it's funny at Belleville. You could damn near reach out and smack the cameraman as like
Yeah,
you're racing. They're out there just hanging right over the rails because you're never going to
yeah,
get close enough to them. I mean, we're so sideways running around there or so slow. It's like they damn near be in the cockpit window taking a picture of it.
yeah, yeah. How they had the wood fence on the infield. Yeah,
Yep. Oh yeah. Yep.
You know, the one thing too, Jake, that you mentioned to me, the fact that like on an off weekend with you, you're not really watching a lot of sprint cars. You mentioned the word you used actually was disconnect yourself. And that's why you've kind of like you love late model racing. It's kind of like last weekend, you said I watch every lap last week at Farmer City. It's my way of
yeah,
kind of getting away from it. I'd like you to talk. I mean, I can see where burnout
Yeah.
is
yeah,
is a lot, where you gotta recharge the batteries.
yeah. I mean, yeah, when you're competing like we do,
Mhm.
it can get to you sometimes. So it's nice to,
Sure.
I don't know, you watch enough sprint car races and you kind of like, you watch it and you're like, I don't know, start critiquing or whatever, but it's nice to just kind of like disconnect. It's something complete. They're doing, late model guys are doing the same thing, just in a different alternate universe. So like, it's
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
it's nice to just kind of disconnect. And like, that's what I like to do is, if I get in race fan mode, I like watching late models, supercross, some F1 stuff, like just different things,
Yeah, still a racing buff, but I'm this kind of the same way. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love watching late model racing, but I'm a huge sprint car fan in general. Like I love going down to Volusia. Early in the year, I've been to Knoxville now for the last 3 years. I'll never miss another one, even though it's on north. I think it's north south weekend. I will gladly skip the north south to go to Knoxville and watch
The
the
only
sprint
way
cars there.
the only reason you missed the one year to go north south because Dad got inducted.
Yeah, that's true. That's
Otherwise, you wouldn't
Yeah.
have missed that one.
But kind of going on top of your crew chiefing career, something obviously the biggest one you have of all of them, right, is the King's Royal with Sonny, and as a obviously as a race car driver, it's like you always want to win those big events. But what does that feel like from a crew chief standpoint? All the preparation, all those things that you've done to kind of cultivate to that event. I mean, obviously it speaks a lot for in itself, but what does that feel like for you? Was that like obviously it's a bucket list check off, but is it something like, man, I'm like, we made it, or is it, obviously it makes you work, you still want to work as hard, but what did that kind of do for your morale and the team and everything like that?
Yeah, it was pretty surreal feeling. So like that was 21, and that's really like the first year that we ran full time. And like you go to these races and you're like, well, let's see what happens. And we dealt with some rain and it was a day race and stuff.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, I mean, to win a race like that's unreal. The only bad part about it was, like, it was a day race and then we had a night race, so we didn't really have much
Yep.
time to soak it in. It was like 90 minutes and we're hot lapping again, and
Yeah.
racing again. So that kind of sucked a little bit, but I mean, yeah, I mean, it's nice to know that, you can compete at that, all the hard work and everything, you can compete at that level. And yeah, I mean, yeah, obviously to get a win like that was great. And 21 was really just a massive year in general. We won Ohio Speed Week. We won the All-Star Championship by like, over 200 points, won King's Royal. Like, I mean, it was we set the expectations pretty high. You know, from there forward for sure.
Do you have a favorite track? Is there a favorite track like that you just love? I mean, that you, when you see the schedules come out, that it's like, I just love going to this place.
Not not necessarily, but I did like going to Paris and California this year. That was
Okay,
that's a track that I spent a lot of my
exactly.
childhood at and stuff. So like that was great. I hadn't taken a car there, personally in 10, 15 years, a while. So that was cool. But no, I mean we always love going to Knoxville, Eldora, Port Royal, um, Kokomo. That's kind of our home race here now.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, yeah, we like our favorite race is the next race all the time. But
There you go.
but
Absolutely.
but we do like, yeah, I would say that those four kind of stick out. Knoxville, Eldora, Port Royal, Kokomo. Yeah, those kind of stick out a little bit more than the rest, I would say.
Now I got it going for you because I know obviously you're out crew chief and doing all these things, but you got any good stories like something when you tried something way off the wall or a 4 a.m. deal when you've been working on something or hanging out with the guys and you know dream up all these good ideas? You ever done one and it's come to life and actually worked, or some good ones that didn't work? I know there's a bunch of
The
them.
Uh,
cabin's already.
no, I mean, yeah, you have a, you have yeah, you have boner moves every now and then, and you have some good stuff happen. I, I'd say one cool thing that happened one time was I don't know, middle of Ohio Speed Week. We had crashed a couple times. It was nine nights in a row, and I mean it's hotter than hell out there. And yeah, we had wrecked a couple times and kind of took ourselves kind of out of contention. And we're like, you know what, let's get a different car down. And I mean, had a full deal, cars, engines out, shit everywhere, and and but like Tyler, he come out of the hotel the next day and he had just a mustache, and I'm like, what the hell? And he's like, yeah, let's go finish this week off, and I think we ran third that night, won the next night at Waynesfield, and finished it off strong. So, kind of salvaged our week there. So that was just kind of like one thing that kind of stood out. But I mean, yeah, we have highs and lows all over the place, as you know,
Oh yeah.
throughout the season. So
Do you guys, I'm curious, with you, do you share a lot of information like with Sheldon's team and your team? I mean, naturally, Richard's, involved with both, and the marshals with both, and with Sheldon. And I'm just curious, I see Sheldon going up and down the highways now with David, a lot with gravel. And I'm just curious, like, do you guys share information? I know the combinations from the cars and everything is completely different. So,
yeah,
but I'm just curious, you guys, if you get in a funk or you're doing something different, if you stumble up on something, do you share that with her, everything's just so different that it doesn't
um,
really work?
yeah, everything's so different. Like Sheldon and Tyler are just different drivers, and
Mhm. No
Ripper and
doubt.
I are different dudes, I guess you could say. And
Mhm.
but I mean, we'll bounce, like anytime we're around each other, me and Ripper will bounce some stuff off of each other, especially like we're both kind of on the same engine platform now, and just kind of getting things leveled out there. um, but no, it, I don't really talk to too many people, like 17 car or otherwise. We don't really
Yeah.
talk to a whole lot of people or share much information at all, really. I, almost probably don't talk to too many people, like almost to a fault sometimes, because sometimes you can get a little behind trends,
Oh yeah.
if things are evolving or changing and you're not hip to it or whatever. Sometimes you can get a little bit behind, but we've always just, you know, we race out of our trailer and we do stuff our way, and whether it's right or wrong, that's how we're going to battle.
Yeah. Well, I think you have to, right? Especially on a national tour. As much as some guys might be your buddies or whatnot, you know, you talk about things and do different stuff and maybe say, oh yeah, we tried this one time or whatever. But Lord knows if you're over there asking information from another trailer and they're giving some, as soon as you hit on something, they're going to be the first ones in the door, asking from you as well. So it's one of those give and take deals. Like I said, I feel like that's what's also so different about the sprint car world, is because there is so much variance in shock packages and motors and cars and things that, you need to keep your information as tight as possible, because if you're giving stuff out, the next thing you know, you're gonna see the kind of the same stuff. Maybe they all start migrating one way because somebody got a piece of information from over here. And I'm sure, I mean, obviously, you working at a shock company, everybody's hush hush about shocks, right? It's nobody's over there just going, oh yeah, here, come look at this graph, come check this out, and nobody's just giving those things out because they're your buddy.
Yeah, no, that's true. Yep.
Well, I think we got to talk about Knoxville Raceway. I mean, we got the big 2-day show this weekend, and
Mhm.
and I think when I talk to the different teams and stuff, it's like they always say the same thing: you can never get enough laps there. You're always preparing for August. It seems like, and I'd like you to talk a little bit about that, the preparation that goes into a Knoxville National. Do you feel pressure? Do you feel pressure like when you roll in there in August, knowing that you guys are one of the best teams? You've led the race. You've had some. You guys are fast every time you're there. I mean, you kind of fly a little under the radar. Everybody always talks about the shots and Larson and stuff, but I don't think people give this team enough credit. I mean, you guys have led laps. You've been a high point. You've been on the front row of the Nationals. Yeah, for Saturday night. So, do you feel it when you get there? I mean, is there what's a vibe like?
Well, yeah, I wouldn't say it's like a nervous feeling or anything like that, or a pressure feeling, but it definitely, come Nationals week, it's definitely has a different vibe than most races for sure. Definitely a pressure cooker environment. Qualifying so critical there, and so yeah, a lot of your weekends on those 2 laps. Getting the pill draw, getting 2 really good laps in to set yourself up the way the points work and stuff on the prelim nights. And yeah, we kind of like have that track's so unique that we kind of have like there's stuff that we do there that we don't do other places. So it's kind of like its own little setup book for there. And and the fact that we don't get to race there very much makes everything a little bit more important too. So like they got a test night there tomorrow that we'll go to and utilize all the laps we can get, and hopefully we get tomorrow night in, and both race nights, because like last year we got the test night in and watched it rain for the next
Right.
few days or whatever. So
Is it, from a crew chief standpoint, obviously at Knoxville for the Nationals, you don't have your trailer in the infield. Does that change things for you throughout the night when you're making, obviously you're probably used to being able to go in and get on a dyno and do different stuff. Does that change much for you, or are you still wheeling in and out of the infield, going and trying different things?
No, so like that definitely puts a little kink in your flow, how the night flows, but basically it's just like getting all your shock stuff done before you head in and stuff like that. So you just got to be really well prepared, really. Not having the trailers in there it does suck sometimes, but I mean I get kind of why they do it, but it is a little bit of a hassle or whatever. But
yeah, well, I know the one year I was there, I was down there with Ripper and Sheldon, and them were having issues and couldn't figure out if it was a box, didn't know if it was nozzles, didn't, and you're scrambling in that moment. Normally you're able to just run to the trailer and grab everything that you think you might need, and then you turn around and you staring at an open trailer with a mule, and you're like, well, I hope we find it, and it was just a kind of wild deal. But it's just, for me, it's like I couldn't, as a late model racer, there's no way in hell I don't think you could take us and we could go do it, and justify it. It's like we have way too much stuff. We're adjusting so much all the time, with our smashers and shocks and different things. it's always been, it's cool to see. Don't get me wrong. I love the nostalgic purpose of it. At the end of the day, that it's still exactly the same as it's always been. But I just always wondered, what that would be like as a team, just what that, kind of wrench it throws into your program.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's definitely a whole different thing, but yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I feel like on the prelim nights and stuff like that, you could probably pull the trailers down there, no problem and stuff. But yeah, no, it's a guaranteed fact that no matter how much shit you bring down there and how well prepared you think you are, you're gonna forget something in the trailer or whatever. So
Yeah. It's always the thing you need. It's never
yeah, yeah.
something you don't need. It never fails no matter what you do.
Yeah, and that's always like, yeah, right before pit meeting or something like that. Things are, getting real intense and you're like, ah, damn it, I forgot the whatever, and you're gonna run out there and yeah.
But you're the crew chief, though. You just send somebody else to go get it, right?
Oh, I don't know. Hey, last year we sent Ron went out there and he borrowed somebody's scooter and just ate shit on the back straightaway trying to get across. He come in all muddy. You're like, what the hell? What have you been doing?
Yeah. He stopped at Dingus is what he did. That's probably what it was.
Yeah, right. Yep.
Oh shit.
Do you like the 50 lap form? Do you like the format of the two, with the basically two races being into one with 50 laps at the Nationals? Do you think, I'm just curious as a crew chief, do you like it? I mean, I've talked to Ricky Warner about this. We need to go back straight 30 laps, and
Yeah. It's kind of turned into everybody kind of makes the most out of the first cut, the start and restarts, but really you're just kind of riding the first 25 laps and coming in and adjusting for the real race, the second time. And I wouldn't be surprised if they went to no tire changing after Larson won last year without changing tires. Like tires aren't that big of a deal.
Right.
Be $700 less, that we're just putting tires on because we can, type thing. I don't know. It probably needs a little tweak, like maybe just fuel only. I don't think that they'll shorten it back to 30 or 35 or anything like that. They seem to like the 50. So if it's 50, yeah, maybe we just go to fuel only and see what you got, really.
I've always it's nothing against the sprint car race, and I kind of sounded off a couple weeks ago on Twitter about it, or X, whatever you want to call it. But it's just the constant, open reds and all these things just seem like it's almost like tired. You get so sick watching it. It seems like every night we have issues, and next thing you know, we're rolling around for 40 caution laps. Then we got to have an open red, and it's well, you can work on your race car now. I feel like, for you guys, it's like, man, you'd rather it just be, hey, whatever you set your race car up at the beginning is like what you have no matter what happens. If we need to put fuel in it, great, we'll put fuel in it, but nothing else. I mean, that from a driver standpoint too, you'd rather do that because it allows a guy who doesn't take care of his tires to kind of get a reprieve at the halfway break.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, the fuel stops are definitely, they're a buzzkill, to race fans and the race in general, honestly. But I mean, yeah, I would, like I said, I'd kind of like to just see, if we're going to stay with 50, maybe we just go to fuel only and have at it, guy with the best car and best driver, managing the car, manages his tire for 50 laps and stuff like that. Gets it done. So
that's exactly the way I looked. That's the thing for me. I've always just, watching races. It's like, man, it's like, I wish they'd just let these guys just run without letting them stop and change all this shit, because it would make the racing better, because it would take a guy who just is able to go wear his stuff out right away out of that race, and then he'd have to learn how to conserve on it or take care of his car, or, things along those lines. But yeah, obviously I think Knoxville, I agree with Jake. I don't think they're going to ever come back away from the 50. They've made it too much of an entertainment venue for that race, and nothing wrong with it. I think I think longer races are better. I think the better teams always find a way to the top anyways. And those longer races normally end up showing it who's got the best car by the end of the races.
Yep.
I
Yeah,
want to
sorry, I had
talk
to come
about.
in here. Plug
Go ahead.
I just had to come in and plug my phone in, but now you can see
Oh,
my.
you're good. Oh, Dennis Herb, there is aim back.
I got a
He's
fab
got
over there,
back. Oh yeah, look at that.
Yeah, it started a little hot.
Let's get back to this Illini 100. I know we want to talk about it. What were your thoughts? What were your thoughts? We were talking a little bit about it yesterday, but what were your thoughts when Overton and Sheppy went nose to nose there a little bit? You know, what were your thoughts? What were you watching?
Man, I mean, I love Farmer City, and I mean, Shepherd loves it. He's so fast there, man, so good. And like, whenever he was coming through that heat race and Overton, I had to go back and watch it because it initially looked way worse than, it just looked like he knew, Overton looked like he just knew he was going to get into Brandon, and then he like let off the gas at the last second and made it way worse, and turned him around. And but I was like, no, it's freaking over now. Like I know from experience, most of these drivers have that extra, what is that, 110% switch or whatever, and I think Overton just switched that one on Sheppy there, and he was on it the rest of the night.
Yeah. Well, and Sheppy always has that. That's like the one thing a lot of us talk about in our pit area is like the one guy you don't want to get revved up is Shepherd, because when he lights the second switch, it's hard to get to him. I mean, like it's kind of unbelievable where the second gear he gets to when it's, especially in his home places like Fairbury and Farmer City, where he knows how to run the curb better than anybody else. I mean, he did it to me one night at Fairbury. I passed him for the lead during one of the Castrol races. I passed him probably right around the halfway point, and we had a yellow right after that. 5 laps later, after the yellow, I couldn't even see him. I mean, he just got up and was like, "Well, the hell with you. Like, I'll go hard now, I guess." I'm like, dude, I'm going as hard as I can.
That was at Farmer City, right?
Don't poke the bear.
No, it was at Fairbury probably 4 years ago. But
Okay.
yeah. I mean,
Gotcha.
it was wild.
Yeah, him and Brandon and Brad Sweet, they kind of remind me a lot of each other. Like, or they put off kind of those same vibes. Like they're just championship racers, will top 5 you to death, but they ain't afraid to sack up and put it on the cushion and like just show you like how good they are.
Yeah, well, it's funny because you always see Brad as this guy who takes care of his equipment, and which he does, but there are plenty of times, like you're saying, where all of a sudden he'll light the wick and you're like, where the hell did that come from? And then it's way faster than anybody else. Like it just comes out of nowhere. Go ahead. I want to hear what you have to say.
I was just gonna say there was one time at an outlaw race at Kokomo in 21 when we were up there, and like it was getting pretty gnarly. Like up on the wall off of 2, and Brad, he's leading points. It's deep into the season. I think it's tight, but he's leading points, and it's August or September. It's coming down to crunch time, and I mean he comes out late to qualify, and I mean he's over the cushion, like left rear on the cushion, like tapping the wall, and goes quick time. Like, man, he didn't like need to do that, but he did it anyways.
The hell with it. Yeah. And it's like when somebody like their driving caliber does it, they mean to do it. It's not like, oh, he just lucked out and ran into one there, like some guys
Right.
can do. Yeah, it's like that was full on intentional, exactly what he was doing there. I mean, I've been to that, I've been to Charlotte, I don't know how many times now when he's been crowned champion there with the outlaw stuff. And you could see it's like he knows when he's in a good spot. He might be riding around there 6th or 7th, or maybe he's running 4th, and it's like, oh, maybe I'm going to get me 2 more, and he'll just light the wick, and you're like, man, I wish I had the ability to just turn it on like that. But and there's really only a few guys across all of our racing that can truly do that consistently. I mean, obviously Kyle, Brad, felt like Donnie has
Yeah.
always been one of those guys that, Donnie's always been the smooth kind of, but he'll get up there and wail on it. I mean, he's not scared of it either. And so it's, and like on the late model side, JD and Sheppy and Bobby, I feel like, and RTJ, like those four guys, there's only a handful of them on each side that truly have that ability.
Yep.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's been great. We got one of the best crew chiefs in the business on the night, and then we got to talk late model racing with him too.
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people expected that.
I'm gonna have to get
I
you
was
a door
going to
fan.
say he's probably going to get your contact information and see what you got going on maybe some off weekends.
Yeah.
And take
Yeah,
advantage of it.
Yeah, I've always said like I said, I like watching them as a fan. Great racing, great history. I like the history of the sport. And like I said, going to a lot of those summer nationals races in the late 2000s was just a great era. Like Don O'Neill and Fab just getting after it every night. I mean, it was just something to watch. Moyer would come up on weekends and steal the 10 grand races and stuff. And but just a cool era. But I have almost zero intention on ever working on one. They look like a real pain in the ass to me.
Dude, yeah. Well, that's what I always say. Like when I go to the Chili Bowl or if I'm anywhere with Ripper and them, I'm like, oh, I'm good. I'm like, I got a screwdriver, an air gauge, and a 9/16 wrench. Good to go.
That's
like,
all you need, bud.
Yeah, I'm like, we're good to go. We got that figured out. So
Yeah.
Well, I mean, hell, any weekend you guys are off, you want to just come hang out. The cooler's always full on our end, so you can just hang out and shoot the shit and tell me if I'm doing anything wrong. That would be a blast.
Yeah,
we'd like
that'd
to
be
see it
cool.
more. Is there anybody you want to thank or anything? Is there anything that you would like to touch on that we didn't touch on that you were thinking about or anything in your mind? I mean,
no,
this is your time too. I mean, we asked a lot of questions,
Yeah.
but if there's something that we didn't address that you feel like need to be addressed, now's the time.
Not really. Just like whenever we were talking about like influential people there, we talked about Dave Steele. What a great mentor he was and a great friend. Miss him like crazy. And Andy Bondio, just the way he conducted his racing operation was just so different. So it's kind of like every year that I'd go there, it's just kind of like, you race a certain way through the whole year, but like the way he approached Chili Bowl and his cars, his fabrication skills, stuff like that, his preparation, was just it's just like a refreshing look at things, how you could do things differently. And then I didn't want to leave out, I worked with Bubby Jones for a couple of years, which was amazing. Another great dude. So like I'm just big on the history of sports, and to be able to work with a few guys like that along the way has been very humbling, very rewarding. So
I mean, you think about it. I mean, Bondio, Bubby Jones, got a pretty good wheelman now you're working with. I mean, and it just tells you what you've done. I mean, it's pretty impressive. That's a nice resume.
Have you kept track of how many wins you've had over your career?
Well, to be honest with you, the bulk of them have come here in the last 4 years or so, 4 or 5 years. But I don't know. I haven't really kept track of that. It's just it's all about the next one for now.
Yeah, well, it's just always funny. I mean, you think about it. We always talk up drivers and it's win number 100, win number. I could have only imagined probably some of the crew chiefs numbers that we don't know. That have really racked up a lot of wins. I mean, you think about a guy like Ricky Warner.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine how many. I mean, obviously he's been all them years with Donnie, but even after
Tyler
that,
Walker.
Yeah, exactly. It's like he's probably 500-600. I would say somewhere in that realm. Which is kind of wild to me, but yeah, you guys are the unsung heroes. That's the way we look at it. It's like drivers usually get all the glory of it, and the crew chiefs just give a thumbs up and say, "We'll go to the next race."
Yeah, and I think I can't speak for everybody, but I think that's kind of how most of us like it, anyways. I think a lot of us just love grinding it out and let them get the spotlight while we're working.
Well, I think that's one things that Gordy and I chatted about a little bit. That's what's great about the Dirt Parlor. What we're trying to do is people like you and the unsung people, the people behind the scenes, people need to know who these people are and need to know more about them and what they're doing. Because I'll guarantee you that Tim Clausen and Richard Marshall are going, hey, this guy's pretty important part of part of our organization. And in order for us to be second in the points and to win these big races, a lot's got, Jake Argo's been at the front of this, and
Yeah.
like I said, I wish we'd have won the 1 year at the Chili Bowl with you and Timmy, and your guys were, with Clausen. That's kind of one of the ones I wish that if we could change anything. But then again, Brian winning Chili Bowl is pretty cool too, though. So,
Yeah. Timmy was, man, he's a great dude to work around for sure. Like just hardcore racer,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we had some good runs, but,
Yep.
yeah, no, I love getting to talk to him anytime, we cross paths wherever they're at.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, man, we really appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely.
And best of luck to you guys for sure coming up. Here at Knoxville this weekend. I'm sure we'll cross paths at some point in the near future, and come check you out while I'm up at Knoxville for the week.
I'll see you Friday, Jake.
Good.
All right.
All right.
And I'll make sure
Sounds
I get
good,
you a
guys.
couple of Dirt Parlor hats. Okay, bud?
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Thanks, man.
Appreciate you guys.
Appreciate it, Jake.
All right.
Thanks,
Have a good
Jake.
one.
Thank you.
See ya.
As we look into this week, and we've got a couple of races that we need to talk about. The biggest, probably late model event of the weekend, and I know you're participating too as well, is the Slocum 50 at 34 Raceway in Burlington, Iowa. And I think when we look at these picks, Shepard coming off the big win last weekend, but I think the 32 rebounds from Farmer City last weekend, and I think Bobby Pierce is definitely my pick for this weekend.
Well, he's got the most success at this race as well. I know he's won a couple of them, but I'm going with Sheppy, man. If I got to pick somebody, it's Sheppy. He's always better in the B5 than he is the Rocket 1. Always. And if they figured something out,
and why is that?
I don't know. I don't know exactly. It's just I think Sheppy's always had a good package for the Midwest style tracks. I think that helps him a lot. In different variances, he does a lot of testing out inside these racetracks, and it's been that way for like 5 years, though, man. Like we hate seeing the B5. Not that we don't want to see the Rocket 1, but I'm telling you, them guys in the pit area hate seeing the B5. I promise.
Well, the funniest thing, he had a quote of the week. He says, "I'm not back because I never left."
Yeah, well, I did hear that.
And I love it.
Yeah.
And you made a good point. They poked the bear last week.
I'm telling you, that's the last thing you want to do is wake that motherfucker up.
But you know what? That's what the fans want, though. A Pierce Shepard match. This is,
I hope they wipe each other out. That'd be pretty cool. Maybe I'll sneak one in there.
Well, the other one, we talk about it, Alberson's got history in Iowa, with the Roberts team being from there, and then Gustin from Iowa. And let me tell you what, that guy at the top a little bit, he ran really good last weekend, and we both know he's due to pick one off too.
He's one of them guys, man. Shirley's always been
a little under the radar this week.
His is when he gets hot, man. He goes on a run. He will go on a tear, and he'll rip 6 out of 7 out of nowhere. But right now, and he was good last weekend. We got to watch a lot of it, and it was a home track, and that builds momentum, man. You get some confidence back going. Watch out.
Well, so you like Shepard, and I like Bobby.
Yep.
And now going to Group 2, I know it. It's funny as I was talking to Jason, and I'm taking Jason Figger this week as in my Group 2, and the reason why I like Jason this week is because he told me, he goes, 34 Raceway is weird to him. He goes, it's a track where I really like racing at, but my results stink.
Yep.
But he goes, I don't understand why I'm not better there. But he goes, it is a track I really like. I just don't know why I don't run good there. But I think this is his week, in that group, but the guy under him, man, scares me too.
Yeah, Bab, same deal. I mean, he's had success up there. Obviously had some terrible luck last week, Farmer City.
Yep.
But if it's up to me, I'm rolling with the 32. I'm taking Chris, and the reason being that's hometown race for him as well.
Yep.
But also, I mean, obviously, me and Chris are really good buddies, but I'm telling you, he's got one of the most solid programs at these style racetracks. Them Iowa racetracks, long races, he always finds a way up front near him. I've raced with him long enough to know that, when racetrack slows down, he's a technical guy. He's good when it's slick. It's good when it's round the bottom. So I'm going with old Big Daddy Chris Simpson.
Who do you like there in Group 3?
Not Trevor. It's nothing against him, but I'm going Unzicker. Unzicker's got the most success at the Slocum out of any of those guys. Kind of same deal, man. When you know how to get around a place, you find a way towards the front of those races. And Unzicker's won the Slocum before, so I'm going with Ryan.
I got a little bit of a dark horse here. I'm going with Ebert. The reason why is because I know Sheppy's helping him a little bit.
Yep.
And I'm watching him turn more and more laps in the slate model now. And I think we forget about how accomplished he was as a modified driver. And I really think that this guy it could be kind of a surprise this weekend because he's been showing some speed here the last couple of weeks.
I mean, I've picked him in our pools damn near every week.
Have.
I've watched him. I mean, hell, at Makokata, he laid down a couple rippers, was racing up front there, and so Dan will figure it out. Dan's a great dude as well. Super super smart. I don't know if a lot of people know that about him, but he Fox Shocks guy, really really smart, in tune with this race program. So you give him a couple months, you're going to see him knock off some top 5s and top 10s at big events, I think for sure.
Well, the other thing is I got to give Gordy props last week before we get off of it, and, leave him to his horn a little bit. He did pick Brandon Shepard to win the Illini. So congrats, brother.
Dude, that's because I've lost a big race to that guy there. Don't bet against the man that has damn near, that's the house that Sheppy built right there. That's the house that Chevy built.
Well, I was just happy to see Rocket win.
Yeah.
It's good. It was good. It was good for Mark and Brandon. They've been working their tails off trying to get better and better, and they have been. And again, like Mark mentioned to me, he says, he goes, man, we're right there. We just haven't had a lot of things go our way. And, things are going to turn. And Mark's never lost the confidence, and Mark knows what he's got with B-Shep.
Definitely.
So good job on the pick last week. And now we can move on to the biggest, in my opinion, the biggest race of the weekend. Anytime you talk World of Outlaws, sprint cars at Knoxville Raceway, let's take a look at what we got to look at this. This is pretty badass. The biggest race of the week, we got no high limit races this weekend. And we got the World of Outlaws sprint cars at the sprint car capital of the world at Knoxville Raceway. And I think when you look at this lineup, Group 6, man, is even stout.
Yeah.
When you look at this. But when you look at Group 1 and you see Larson, Gravel, Shots, Schuhart, and Brad, I don't know what about you, but I want a ticket. I'll watch those 5 guys in Group 1 race any day of the week.
Yeah.
And especially now that you see Shots, I mean,
Told
he
you.
looked pretty good last week. You called it. He looked great. He looked good last week. And now he's going to a place where we all know that he's, the Don father.
Dude, I'm telling you, I knew it was coming. I tried to tell everybody. It was obvious. I mean, 18th to 6th last weekend, runs 3rd on Saturday. Week 2 of having Chevys back in. They go to the place that he knows better than anybody else. I mean,
You said it was going to take him a little bit of time. But
Yeah.
It didn't take him a lot of time.
2 weeks is a little bit of time. 2 weeks is a little bit of time. And I'm going with him.
You know what?
I got the Teflon Don.
You're going with Shotzi, and I you know what? I think David, David's so fast anytime you go to Knoxville, and I think Cody and David got something this weekend. I think last week Beasley, they did what they had to do, get out of there, and he was still really good there too. He got a podium, so I like David, and and there's nothing wrong with the 2 and the 15 going at each other at Knoxville. And but I can't believe actually, who would have thought the guy at the top there, the 57,
dude. I'm telling you, the thing is what Kyle and Paul struggled with last year at any of these events was qualifying, right? Any of the big racetracks, they get behind in qualifying, got to play catch up. Well, they've seemed to have fixed that problem. So it is going to be tough. I'm just partial to tell you that the 15 is you go back there. To me, he knows that racetrack better than anybody else in this field. But that whole list is going to be tough. I mean,
Yes.
we're due for a damn good race.
You look at the second group. We just had our guest on with Jake Argo. Who's the crew chief of Tyler Courtney, and then of course you look at Macedo, who's I was there a few years ago when Carson swept the weekend. And we all know Gio. Gio is the youngest to ever sit on the pole for the Knoxville Nationals. And then you look at the guy who some people say runs that racetrack about as good as anybody in the country, and Aaron. I mean, and then we also know the guy at the bottom ain't no slouch either. This is a very tough one for me to look at, and I'm going with Aaron Reitzel.
Okay, yeah. I've been hot on picking them too. I think obviously their program has stepped
They're
up
showing a lot of speed right now,
and they're moving along. I'm going to go with Sonny. Sonny's had success there, has been up front, in big races, knows how to get it done. And I feel like their program has, I feel like they haven't probably been as good as they'd like to be so far this year, but I feel like they've started to gain some momentum here recently. And Tyler, he'll show up at a big race and put it on him. So I'm going to take the 7BC.
Now we move on to Group 3. And I'll let you take the first pop at this.
Casey's General Store.
Right there, partner.
Yep.
Double B, baby.
Brian Brown.
Blackjack.
Brian Brown.
Yes.
Brian is a big racetrack guy. He's always good at Knoxville. I've loved Brownie to death, man. He's a great dude. I've got to know him for a long time, and anywhere you see him, you look at Eldora, you look at Knoxville, you look at Port Royal, you look at any of these big racetracks. When Brownie's there, he's a contender for the win. It's one of those things he's really, really, that he excels at, and especially Knoxville with how many laps he has there and those things. So, I think also I hate to say it, but Sheldon and them have just haven't been that great recently, and Peck, I'm not sure what's going on there. I don't know if they might just figure it out, but I think Brownie's the class of that group.
Austin McCarl's going to be good. I mean, he's been good all year. He's been good even on the smaller tracks with not a lot of those places he hadn't raced a lot.
Right.
He's really been solid. But I'm like you, and Brown is just he's just such a great ambassador for the sport. I mean, he's such a shot in the arm for sprint car racing. They're so blessed to have him. And then we move on to Group 4 now. We know that Pittman's in a different ride. In the Lunster car, in the black and green 3 that we normally see TK in. And then we look at Madsen, and then we look at Baston and Kramer Willison and Billy Baylog. I'm gonna pull, believe it or not, I like Garrett Williamson this week.
Okay.
I think the Fisher Motorsports machine, and Garrett's had a lot of laps in Knoxville, and they've been showing some speed. I think that they're Baston, it just looks like the team's a little out of sorts to me. And Pittman, I just don't know enough about it, but Billy Baylog, I mean, what can you say? I mean, the guy he's definitely is performing.
Yeah.
So
I'm going to take Madsen. And I really just think kind of the same deal. He's one of them guys that knows how to get around those places. He's been in a lot of Knoxville Nationals. Experience really plays into. I think that the big racetracks at Knoxville and stuff, that experience really takes you a long way. So I'll go with Madsen.
Who you like there in Group 5?
I think I'm gonna surprise you a little bit here, but I'm gonna go with Chris Wyndham. I feel like, they have been really good recently. The clearly the team's vibing together good, and I think that Chris is really starting to get some confidence behind the wheel. I think that was probably what he was missing, before this season in the wing stuff, and that's really going. And Chris, I mean, the speed and that stuff don't scare Chris. I mean, he's ran Silver Crown cars on the miles, and all those Indy Lights and different things. So
it takes a midget to Eldor.
yeah.
Okay.
So I'm gonna go with Wyndham.
It's funny you mentioned Chris because I think Chris has been one of the best stories of the year. Because I watched him at Peevely. I was walking around and him and Georgia had the baby and stuff. And he looked like his attitude is the smile. He had a lot of smiles. It looks like he's really comfortable in what's going on. Him and Jason have really looked like it's a good combination.
Yeah.
And I'd be the first one to say I might have missed the boat on this one. And I was wrong, but it looks like he's been really good this year.
Yeah.
Now I'm going with Chase Randall because Randall's won a lot of 360 races at Knoxville, and I think that he's got a lot of laps there, and I think this is Chase Randall's going to be my group over there in Group 5. And then when I look back at Group 6, then a little bit, when I look at that deal, this is a tough one for me, but I'm going with Ryan Timms. And the only reason I look at Ryan Timms is the team he's driving for races at Knoxville, and so they should have some good notes. And I think Timms is so talented.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm actually gonna stay on the hot hand with Tanner Holmes. I feel like they've obviously Tanner's rolling along right now. That race last weekend was wild. Was wild.
Might have been the best race.
I didn't even see it. I just happened to see that they had put the highlights of it, and then I see the last lap with him and Sanders, and I'm like, kind of holy shit. I feel bad for him because he really should have actually won that deal. Mm-hmm. I don't want to tell him he screwed himself, but he kind of did because he was so clear. He could have just run the bottom and been good. But, I feel like Tanner's got a lot of speed right now. Obviously, Knoxville's its own beast, and so that doesn't necessarily just translate into that place. But clearly they've got a good program put together there, and they wouldn't be going if they didn't have confidence and didn't feel like they could go compete.
I was just going to say, how cool is it to see the Tarleton 21 in the Midwest in April?
Yeah.
No, I mean, we normally see this in July, and we're going to see it again when McFadden gets back in the car. But it's pretty badass to see the Tarleton machine, that flat black rig, rolling into Iowa in April.
I think it talks a lot about what they're doing with their program and how clearly they're raced up because of what Tanner's been able to do in the car and how competitive they've been. So I think it's pretty neat. Obviously, it tells they're getting ramped up for Knoxville in August, and they want to come out here and get some notes and build up for it.
Well, that's going to conclude the Dirt Parlor and our picks for the week. I look forward to discussing the outcomes of this with you next week, Gordy.
Man,
this ought to be pretty
wait.
fun. I'm sure I'm wrong. But if I'm right, you're going to hear it. If you're wrong, you're going to hear it. So good luck to everyone. And I hope everybody enjoys the picks. And, love to hear some feedback from some of the people on our social media outlets of who they like this week, you know. But the Dirt Parlor's here to stay. And we're excited about where we're going.
Yeah, absolutely. Make sure you like and subscribe on YouTube.